started. It's 9 o'clock.
I don't have
This is
ginger
our
ale.
special meeting agenda for elected officials, August 18th, 2021. And in attendance are Commissioners Brooks and Duncan. And I think everybody pretty much knows each other. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay. I will mention that Commissioner Filios is on vacation. And we can start with item number 1, and that is IRS name update. Steve?
Jill actually put this on there. Let me see if I can elaborate what's going on. Recently, we identified that the county has registered with the IRS an incorrect name for the county. So instead of Kootenai County, it's the County of Kootenai, which technically, when we go to fill out new banking documents, we're rejected. So one of the things that we're going to do, but I just wanted to check with everybody else, is take the lead of making that change with the IRS. And then possibly that could snowball into other name changes that we might come across. So it's either the treasurer probably will take the lead or the clerk with the IRS. So you and I can talk afterwards. If you would prefer to take the lead, you're more than welcome to. And we did receive a legal opinion from Barry's staff, and we are certain it is Kootenai County, Idaho. So when you complete documents, make sure that you use that. Don't abbreviate county. Don't leave out the comma. Spell out Idaho. Because when it comes to banking documents, if they don't match, it causes all kinds of problems. So if anybody else wants to be involved in the process, either commissioners or legal, I think Jim and I will just kind of arm wrestle and figure out which one of us takes the lead. Any questions?
If you need a commissioner to be involved, let me know, but otherwise.
Ultimately, you guys will probably have to sign off on the document. So.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that one? All right. Item number 2, process for selecting market for wage study. 2 years ago, we went through this process, and I'm thinking we might have a little bit better way to go about it this time, so I'll let Sylvia speak to this.
Okay, just to give you some background and what we have potentially in an agreement with the Maribin is, so the wage study would start October this year for fiscal year 23 implementation. There's going to be a discussion about implementation if we see something out of the norm. And so,
Question.
Yes.
You said Maribin. I don't know that. I'm certainly not familiar with that term. Can you help us?
A Maribin, so last time we did the wage study, we worked with BDPA. They've sold their company to Maribin, which does HR consulting and market studies and training. So they are the organization that took over for BDPA, so we feel very engaged with them. That's who we're finding partners around Kootenai County are using, and also Bonner County use them as a great resource for market studies. So we have a proposal from them. They would start with us in October. What we need to do is look at what our market is again this year. Last wage study, the elected officials agreed on what our market was. So we want your input again related to this. If you could give us like who your top 2 or 3 agencies are that you're losing organizations to. And of course we would want to do Spokane County, the city of Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, those kinds. I'd assume that's what we want. Right now with the Maribin, they're recommending 5 regional locations be used, but I have a call into them to ask them if we can expand that if necessary. And we would also be looking at public and private sector.
What are the 5? What are the 5?
Well, we get to pick it as a group,
Oh.
as elected officials. If you'll give me your input, we can bring it back to the next elected officials meeting and say, these were the top ones we
Okay.
saw. We'll take a total and see what it looks like, and then we can bring the group together and see if there's some consensus. And then the board would say, yes, this is the route we're gonna go. But for the 2019 study that we did, I'll give you the agencies, the locations we used. Bonner, Bonneville, Canyon, Coeur d'Alene, Hayden, Idaho Falls, Post Falls, Rathdrum, Spokane, Spokane County, State of Idaho, and State of Washington. So we had a pretty broad grouping of agencies. Last time we did not use private sector. I'd encourage us to look at it. It's available to us. So Ameriben will get data from the Economic Research Institute, Northwest Data Exchange, and any other resources they have to match our jobs. And typically they'll benchmark 50 positions, and we could identify some routine positions that we would see, like deputies, detention deputies, appraisers, individuals from the clerk's office, attorneys, those sort of things. But if we have some that we didn't get market data for last time, we can ask for some specific positions, such as the reprographics position, potentially the RMO director position, because there was talk about that sort of thing. So if you could provide us with your top 3 locations you feel are relevant to the market study, provide them to me by September 1st. We can collect that data and then bring results back to the elected officials and at the September 15th meeting. So that's an approach we'd like to take with all of you and have you all engaged in the process and get your buy-in so we can get this rolling and see how things look for us. Part of the study that they're going to do as well is look at the cost of labor and the cost of living. So how they'll connect that to what our salaries are and where they should be at market. We'll see how that pans out, but I think it's an important thing because our cost of living here and housing is so high that I'm hoping something factors in when we look at our salaries.
So that's different than the last time a wage study was
Yes,
done.
yes, this would be new.
Couple questions, I guess. Is there a list you could provide us to choose from? In other words, I'm not familiar, and probably none of us are familiar with is it Ameriben? Who Ameriben has access to in terms of data?
It'll be a national database.
Right.
So,
But still,
like states
well,
and counties and municipalities, would that be helpful?
I don't know. I mean, I would suggest at least Washington and Idaho, who's available for us to
Okay.
select from. And then I guess if that's possible, that'd be great. And I guess another question I have is why 5? Last time we picked many more.
Right.
So why the restriction to 5?
And that's a question I have out to Ameriben to see about expanding those organizations and those locations for us and what that might look like.
So if let's say it's 5 just for discussion's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you want us each to select 5 and try to identify those 5 that are most popular, so to speak, as opposed to 3?
You could do 5. I just threw out maybe your top 3, because where are you primarily losing people to, and where are you primarily recruiting from? If you've lost one to Oregon or whatever, Portland or something like that, we'll want to just look at where is our market truly at, and primarily, not the one-offs kind of thing. But we may see that sort of thing happening across the board, that then we'd say, okay, do we want to bring those organizations in? And so if you'd like to give me your top 5, that'd be fine as well.
Well, it depends on how many locations are agreed upon that the salary survey is going to be pulling from. So it could be 5, it could be 10. I guess we need to know the number that will be utilized before we can identify how many recommendations we give you.
Okay, all right,
Does that
fair
make
enough.
sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then, I guess the last time, my memory of it is that we spent a bit of time in the conference room upstairs talking and writing things on the whiteboard and debating and yeah, we came down to an agreement, but it was after some discussion and, some concessions and all that sort of thing, because it's not, I guess, an easy process. It seems like, if nothing else, that was helpful to give people an opportunity to voice why they feel certain areas were important to them and come down to a decision ultimately. I don't know. I guess I'm just throwing out that might be a frustrating but valuable exercise.
Yes. Right, and I think if we get your input ahead of time, we can save some time. And then have all the agencies down listed of the input that we've gotten, and then do that discussion and saying, okay, I hadn't thought of this one, or that's a good choice, or whatever. And then we have that discussion as a group and saying, okay, these are our picks, whether it's 5 organizations, locations, or 10. But I can, I'll verify that and send an email to all of you.
For the sake of sounding like a broken record, I have been bringing my issues to the check writers of this county for several months about fatigue, about burnout, and specifically 2 areas. And I'm being told repeatedly, wait for a wage study, wage study, wage study. I can't wait for 23. Public safety in Kootenai County can't wait for 23. What is your plan today?
So it's my understanding in the preliminary budget, in terms of your detention officers, the board has set aside
When can we start those discussions?
Well, I wouldn't, if you want me to use the market that we currently have
No,
picked.
I want you to use Spokane City, and Coeur d'Alene. That's what I want you to use.
For detention.
Well, Coeur d'Alene doesn't have it, but use it for Spokane.
Okay, so we'll have to have a discussion and see if the board.
They're offering now $10,000 for a lateral detention deputy.
Yeah.
What is your action plan for today?
Well,
Do we wait
that is
until we can't till we can't house a jail? What do we do?
We know you're having struggles hiring detention deputies and control room operators. And that's why the board had said, let's put aside some money. If I can get some data early in October, that's why we want to get this market. We want to look at your new market that's been identified, or we could use the old market. If we want to use the old market, that's easy. We can pull that data quick. But if we select a new market, we'll want to use that for consideration of your detention deputies. And my understanding
include
is
cost of living here in Kootenai County. Absolutely. Use Spokane County and include cost of living in Kootenai County. But let's get something rolling.
Sure.
What do I have to do to let people know, hey, they are fatigued and they are burning out with the amount of overtime they have to work? And now we're having to social distance further the inmates in the jail. We're asking the prosecutor's office to seek the judges some early releases on own recognizance on non-serious offenders. I cannot tell you or express to you the criticalness of this particular subject. So we can't wait for 23.
right, and that's why I believe the board set aside some money specifically for your detention deputies outside the norm of the rest of the group.
I think that's all well and good, but I think what the sheriff is saying is something has to happen now. And
we're at a critical level.
I can't stress how much I agree with him on that. The other thing is, not to diminish what you said, but David Callahan's shop is going like this as far as people. They're losing them left and right. and I know all of you, I think, not just some of you, have
That
offered
goes back to
positions.
What do you want?
Pardon?
That goes back to what do you want? I mean, everyone has struggles.
That's what I'm
And-
saying, but
Right, so talking about what you would like to have happen is different from talking about what you would like Sylvia to present to everybody for that purpose.
well, we still need to pay attention to this because the county relies on these people to do critical functions. If you're a builder and you're now out 9 weeks or 12 weeks for a plan approval, that's critical to your livelihood. And we
I
are.
understand the problem.
Okay, it's the same problem, it's just,
What do you want her to do?
well, I
Sheriff
think,
Saxon here to do something. What's your plan today? You're saying that there's an issue that needs to be addressed. What is it that the board would like for her to do to give you information to address any of the issues that are being raised right now?
well, this board member is happy to get together with the other 2 board members and come up with a solution.
That'd be great.
Okay,
And if that's a priority of, hey, let's prioritize these 3 areas, then let's
I
do
have no
agree
problem
on
with
what
that.
areas that need to be prioritized right now.
I agree.
So there are 10 million job openings throughout the United States, and everyone's struggling with this, and no one's found that golden key to recruit. I don't know if even bonuses are helping, we'll have to see. But we did look at our turnover rate for, currently we're at about 11% turnover rate countywide. We're projecting it's gonna be at 17 to 18%. And that's what the national average is looking at as well. So we are experiencing what other communities are. Some of them probably don't have the housing issues that we do and the high cost of living, but that's where we're at right now. And I'm happy to work on something. You tell me what you want and we'll go get it.
I understand.
And we'll present it
You're
to
talking
you.
about the 10 million job openings I heard this morning.
Yeah.
Amazon, locally, $20 an hour and a $1,000 sign-on bonus. $20 an hour. What do your guys make starting?
20.
Well, the control room operators are 16,
16.
but we have to put you through a background investigation, and
Well-
it's going to be a few months.
Who wants to do that? I want to work tomorrow for $20 an hour.
But that's something we can't help. I mean, we can't do away with the background process, but we did take those 8 positions and transfer them to detention because you said it's
Yep,
easier
no,
to hire.
that's.
We're doing the best we
that-
can in a
that-
government
absolutely, yep,
situation.
That helps, absolutely it does.
But this is the environment we live in.
Right.
It's the environment we all live in. Last night, I
Absolutely.
just received a resignation letter from yet another appraiser, so we now have 3 vacancies. 2 weeks ago, I had an appraiser resign. And you mentioned building and planning or community development is going like this. Well, we're just like that. And I would say as community development trails like this, we're even underneath them because it used to be that a building inspector or a plan examiner was considered a transferable skill set. We have seen within the last year and a half, where the wages have increased significantly for building and planning, for the building, and we can't even compete with our own internal department.
Right.
And so now we're at a disadvantage where no one in their right mind is going to consider an appraisal position as a step up. It's a step down financially, significantly.
And I got your letter last night, okay? And the reason I didn't mention you when I mentioned David was you make more noise than David. In a good way, You let us know.
So we have 72 open positions. Currently in NeoGov, scheduled to be hired between now and September 20th is 12. 12 bodies coming our way, 12 people, so that is helpful. But we know we still need to keep working hard on getting those positions filled. We need to serve our community, and that's a priority.
Well, I want to express my appreciation what you guys have done in personnel, human resources. I think you're doing an excellent job. The direction has to be established. I don't think we need to kid ourselves either. We're not the only organization that's fighting this.
Right.
I think we need to buckle up. There's 10,000 open positions in Kootenai County right now. The hospital has almost 600 open positions.
And I would echo what Barry said, is it's incumbent upon us as the leaders of our agencies to develop a plan of what is going to meet our needs, and then present that to HR and to the board. Allison and I are working on that. It's not going to be just throwing money at positions alone. I'm finding that within my department, there are aged systems that don't keep up, that just don't perform what we need it to perform. And so that's an issue on top of the personnel. And so we have to look at the entire picture, and it's incumbent upon us to present that to the board and to HR.
And I think with COVID, we have truly experienced some early retirements that weren't anticipated. This pandemic has really changed the way people think about work and family and life balances, and we also need to get creative in that respect. So we need to work together, and HR is here to put plans together, but like Barry said, give me some direction of what you'd like me to do right now. We knew we're going to take on the wage study for 23. I mean, if it's something we need to do differently now, let's do it. We'll bring you something to the table.
Well, I think, we've already addressed some of the issues. You've come before us. We've even addressed the starting detention pay. We're moving the scales. Everybody's going to get the raises in October. But having that new market, I think, is going to be helpful, because usually in the old market, that drops detention deputies way down. So I think establishing the new market is really the first step. And then we're also doing, in a couple items, we're going to be talking about retention and recruitment bonuses, which is we can do right now, which will be done in September. So those are the things that we're doing right now. But identifying that market seriously is crucial, because without that data, we don't know who we're losing people to. So I have departments who are losing people only to federal level agencies. So we need to know
establish
that.
our market in this study. Can we bifurcate it? Because I think the county is now at a point where maybe 60% of our openings are going to be locally filled. Some of our positions, that might include the attorneys, might include patrol officers, some of that specialty, higher paid employees, is more of a regional, if not national, approach. Is it possible to say 2 different markets?
Yes. Yes, I did ask that question, and we could have
Is
2
that
different
appropriate?
markets.
I'm soliciting input. Or is it one market for all jobs? Anybody have any
We
comments?
had a little bit of a different market for the sworn officers in the last study that we did. So we had, and it wasn't that much difference, but it was a little bit different. I can't remember if we just left out, I can't remember for sure who wasn't included in the market for sworn that was in all the other positions, but you could do 2 markets.
And I
And we
would
just have to identify which positions fall under this market and which fall under that. And
Right,
be
that's
very
why we
clear.
need the elected officials to come forward and say, these are the top 3, 5, I don't care how many,
Whatever.
agencies that we're losing people to. And then that way we can narrow that market down and potentially, to Steve's point, bifurcate. Okay, so maybe grades through 8 are, good with the overall market, but then we need grades 9 through 17 to be with this, slightly different market. So we can
And it's not
easily
only
look
who
at
we're losing people to, is we're all competing for the same candidate. So even though you may have not, we're all competing for that same candidate. And with the housing prices, it's going to be a local candidate. Or draw people away from a different industry, say, hey, you know what? Maybe I will be a dispatcher. Maybe I will be a...
And that's what national
Detention.
trends are showing, are people, they don't want to do their job anymore. They want something different now. And so I think that recruiting piece that we talked about last time is crucial,
It
is
is.
to try to attract those people wanting just get out of a different
And
career.
some of our roles are rather unique. Appraisers, for example, I mean, it's difficult to find someone that's got that transferable skill sets in the private. I mean, you got fee appraisers certainly, but more specifically, it's ad valorem appraisers, and that necessarily means outside the area, regional. And so that's something to consider, but not to go backwards. My question is about Ameribend. Why Ameribend? Do we have a contract with them, or why have we considered
No,
Milliman?
Ameriband is pretty reasonable. A lot of the other agencies that would do this for us would be in the $30,000 to $40,000 range. Ameriband's doing it for, I think, $7,500. So, and they're used by the city of Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Bonner County. Doesn't mean that, and they have a good reputation.
I think
And they have access to the same data that Merriman or Gallagher or whoever would have.
Okay. I think the state just used Milliman. I think they just concluded that earlier this year.
Yeah, they're expensive. If you want us to pursue that, we could.
Well, back to the sheriff's point, maybe something more immediate. I don't need until September 1st to give you a list of the markets that I'd like. I'd like to suggest maybe by the end of today, providing your markets, or at least the end of the week.
Does HR have, HR does all of the exit interviews with employees, and I don't know how many employees actually conclude with an exit interview.
Yeah.
But is there a way to get a recap, and is any of that information garnered from the exit interviews?
It doesn't. It tells us, some of them will tell us, but not a lot. Just, we can look back and see, just knowing who they are and any conversations our team has had with them, or where if you've got that information as well, we can look at it, but it isn't specifically called out. Some say relocation. The majority of the individuals, when they fill out their exit interview, when they do, personal reasons, retirement.
Mhm.
Personal stands out a lot, and that's pretty broad.
Yeah.
Just so I'm clear on the private industry part, if I say City of Coeur d'Alene, it automatically picks up private industry or private information relating to any of the positions that we're looking at? Is that the way
Yes.
it works?
Yes.
By
That's
geo-
cool.
Okay.
That's really by geographic location, yes.
Okay. So sounds like some people are ready to have it by the end of the day, just sooner the better. Then we can either have a special meeting or you guys can come to an HR meeting and we can get that going forward. And then if this ties into it, but it's the wage study implementation guidelines. So we already are looking at, as soon as the initial data comes in, those positions that are severely under market, like we had community development at 40% under market in 2019. So we'll be looking at those specific ones that really stand out. There is money set aside for next year, so we can get those positions fixed before 23. Any other thoughts on the wage study or implementation guidelines? Okay. So next, end of year projections. Dina, do you want to speak to that?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I didn't make a bunch of copies, but I did send this out to everyone last night. So I don't know if my methodology made sense, but I was asked to give a snapshot of where we are with A and B budgets by elected group. I left out anything that was grant funded or anything that was a program and looked specifically at operations and summarized by A budget and B budget for each one of your funds. Now, my methodology said, okay, as of August 16th, this is how much we should have spent based on how many days in the fiscal year, and what was actually spent by percentage, took the difference between those percentages, and then that times the full budget to say, okay, at 8/16, this is how much extra you have that you have not spent to that date. So, anybody have questions about that? I know, Leslie, you had talked about what you wanted to do with some of that. or-
Sure. So, yeah, so two separate things. First, regarding the information that Dina gave, it didn't take into account the current pay period, didn't take into account the money spent that haven't hit the payables yet. So those numbers are very, I don't know if you want to call them
It's an
loose,
estimate.
but it's just an estimate.
It's a snapshot as of a date and time.
Okay. So, before I found out that we are getting about 4 million returned in unanticipated revenue, I thought that would be a good pool. The unspent money would be a good pool like it was last year to address retention bonuses. But since we're having 4 million returned, I'm comfortable just taking it out of fund balance, and then whatever's returned is returned. So, that's ties right into our
The
next.
4 million that you just
Thank-
mentioned of unanticipated revenue or excess of revenue, is that as of the same time period on the A and B expense calculation?
I think it's gonna be, what, sales tax, liquor
Liquor-
tax?
Liquor and revenue
it's-
sharing, there's one more
revenue
quarterly
sharing.
payment coming in for sales and revenue sharing.
So the 4 million is going to be pretty close to the actual number at year end.
Yes.
Projection net, yeah, it was about 4.2
4.2
last time I
million.
did it last week with Keith.
So with that saying, I mean, we're not gonna hit anywhere near there, with retention and recruitment bonuses. So I'm comfortable with going forward, knowing that we have that fund balance to cover these things. So if nobody has any more questions on that piece.
Just to make
Sure.
clear, on the 4.2 million, and I think I understand what the answer is here, but that unanticipated or excess revenue that we identified this year has been contemplated for next year's revenue numbers. So we don't have this likely to occur next year.
It won't be as high for sure.
Exactly. All right, item number 5, retention and recruitment bonuses. Last year, we didn't call them recruitment bonuses, but we did give $500 per employee across the board for that. And so I'll have Sylvia kind of jump in here, and we kind of want to talk about how we're going to approach retention bonuses and recruitment bonuses as well, so.
So in terms of countywide bonuses, all staff last year got a bonus of $500, and there was no criteria set around it. I'd recommend we tighten that a little and really talk about what is that criteria. And a couple of things that, as I'm looking through and reviewing some policies through HR groups and so forth, is looking at the individual at least being here and have successfully completed their first 6 months with the organization, and having no documented performance issues. And I mean documented in their file as conditions potentially to look at for a retention bonus from a countywide perspective. That would be one strategy. I think it's a good idea to give our staff each a retention bonus. They still continue to navigate this new normal, if it's a new normal or whatever it is with this pandemic, and they're working hard. We see other organizations giving recruitment bonuses, but what are they doing to retain? So we don't want to just offer a recruitment bonus, we also want to look at retention bonuses, I believe. So that's one of the thoughts, and if across the board lump sum for everybody, whatever that amount may be, that's appropriate. You guys can determine that. And then if we need to look at some additional criteria for something beyond just everybody getting a recruitment bonus. Is it the hard to recruit areas? Do you look at turnover rates plus other things, not just that, as an option for additional retention bonuses? Because some of the departments have come forward asking for them. So what do we want that to look like?
How do you recommend we approach this question from the standpoint of coming up with the appropriate dollar amount per person might be, or from a funding standpoint saying, okay, we're or we're willing to spend $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million on this retention bonus. How would you approach that or frame the question for us?
Well, I think you want to make it worthwhile to the staff and, because they're going to be taxed on it, of course. So I think we need to know how much money's there and how much you want to use specifically from a county-wide pool. And then if you're going to have another category, what that category looks like and what that pool of money will be. And then we take it from there.
I think the fact that you need the approval of the Board of Commissioners to go forward with this, and I'm certainly right there with you. I think we need to have a, if you will, a task force for retention bonuses and things like that. And then to be able to present it to the Board of Commissioners as a group and then pass it on to you. I mean, that's all we're gonna talk about.
As far as a retention bonus is concerned, I have to admit I struggle with the concept. Because really, a retention bonus, I guess I would like to understand all the reasons behind it. I mean, other than the plain meaning of the word retention, I mean, why are people leaving? Is it because of the pay? And if we're not really addressing the pay issue, then it seems like the retention bonus is just giving away money.
It's a Band-Aid.
It's very much a Band-Aid, and we're not really addressing the issue. And so, I mean, I understand we're doing what we can with limited funds and so I understand that, but it just seems like it's, if we're doing all the right things in all the right other areas, talking about engagement and how to increase employee engagement, and people want to work for the money in their pocket, but there's other reasons as well that work-life balance, that how involved they are. Do they have the right tools? Do they have the systems? Do they have whatever they need to do their jobs right? It's big picture stuff, and so I'm struggling a little bit with the very narrow focus on retention bonus. It feels like if we're not addressing the other issues, it's going to be a very short.
Or reoccur. It would
Yeah.
be a couple more
It's
years.
a short-term solution.
The same.
Well, and I feel we are addressing all of it.
Okay.
So as far as IT, I've had discussions with them, your priority, assessor, treasurer.
Yeah.
System is priority.
Right.
So we are addressing those things. We are addressing the ongoing wages. In my mind, which I don't disagree with you at all, but in my mind, it's kind of an appreciation, like, hey, you're sticking it out. We do appreciate you. We do see you. Thank you for being here. It's just another way to show that we do appreciate our employees.
Yeah, and please don't misunderstand my statement. I'm not saying we don't express and give appreciation. That's not what I'm saying. But I guess I'm just struggling with the delineation.
I get you. I kind of understand where you're coming from. I also, I believe that an employee within that 5 years is probably more at risk of going somewhere else. But if we have a pot of money that we can offer tenure pay for people that have, you have 10 years on or 15 years on or 20 years on, that gives them a little bit of incentive to continue to work for the county.
And make it scaled depending on how long they've been here with the county as well.
Yeah. So on your 10th year anniversary, you get 2% or whatever.
The thank you very much, and we appreciate you, does not spend well at the grocery store or with your mortgage lender.
If you're still 20% below on everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got it.
I like the idea of looking at it from a tenured pay scalable. You've been here 1 year, $250. You've been here 5 years, $500. Whatever those numbers end up being. But I think that might be a nice way to reward.
Because
Back
they're
to
at
my-
a higher risk of leaving. That 5 year or under employee, they're really at a higher risk of leaving.
Back to my original question, and I think Sylvia answered it, but it'd be nice to hear some other people weigh in. what funding is available. Is it the 4 million of unanticipated revenue? Or is it something substantially less than that? Because I really think it's important how we tackle this. Are we starting from over here on the funding side? Or are we starting from over here on what we think it should be?
I probably would be comfortable with $1 million or less. Over that, I would have to understand why we were going over $1 million in one-time bonus money.
Can that be separated from recruitment?
Absolutely.
So one
Completely
for recruitment
separated.
and one for $1 million for retaining?
Yeah, because the recruitment's going to be based on, there's about 6 departments, I identified one more, 6 departments that probably need the focus the most on the recruitment bonuses. And so,
And by recruitment, we're talking like a signing bonus?
Yeah.
And that excludes relocation?
no, relocation separate.
Did I do the math right? That's $1,250 if we assume 800 people qualify for a bonus?
So he says $1,200?
$1,250? I may have done the math wrong.
But we may be looking at people that have worked here less than 6 months, and then last time I think we did temps, which we probably
We
shouldn't
won't
do this
do-
time. We'll do either part-time or full-time
Mm-hmm.
on there, so that'll
More
reduce the number.
focused.
I also think that you need to put, these bonuses are paid over the next year, not immediate, so.
Well, how do, the money's available this year, so.
Well, it's fund balance, so I'm willing to have that discussion because I do agree with that. You know, you're getting your bonus spread out, but it's also going to be, which we're going to hear from next, our payroll people and how that's going to affect them. So I want to achieve a balance there with, you know, trying to keep people here, but also not taxing payroll because already they're down one position, so.
I think the concern last time was doing it back-to-back pay periods. I think if you span it out, and Grace can speak to that, that's a different scenario. 6
Okay.
months or whatever.
So I'm fine with if Sylvia wants to gather like a task force, like Bill said, and it's the usual suspects, I'm sure, that are involved in all your compensation meetings.
Is that fine with the group, or do you want representation from each elected office? Because right now, the compensation group is HR and the auditor's office, Dina and Michelle, and then Nancy Pluff from the commissioner's office, and that's the group.
I like Leslie on it, honestly. Leslie is somebody who has a really good grasp of the numbers from a management standpoint as opposed to a person in the trenches standpoint. Now, that's not to take away from Nancy, the numbers lady for BOCC, but Leslie seems to know where the money's hidden.
And the bodies.
I'm good with that.
So am I.
I'd like to, if I can have a representative on there, I'd like to have one.
Okay. You'll let me know who that is?
Off the top of my head, can we put down Marcia Hegley?
Perfect. That would be good.
So we need to look at retention bonuses, and I like the criteria that was laid out, 6 months, not temporary employees, no documented performance issues, which means written warnings or written, however that goes. And then look at these 6 high turnover, hard to recruit areas, and then look at, you know, how that's going to fit into the scaling. Because I think one of the ideas that Sylvia and I had kind of discussed was the fact that, okay, so we're going to have this pool, fund balance potentially, and then the returning money from these 6 departments that have high turnover, high burnout, whatever those things are, and be able to put a bonus on top of that. So just if the person ends up with a $500 bonus because of where they fall in the tenure scale, and then they're going to end up with another 250 to 500 because they're in detention or appraisal or motor vehicle licensing or one of these high areas that's hard to recruit for. So that's just another idea that the task force can kick around and present. Any other thoughts on that?
I do want to take in consideration the people that really work the front lines during COVID, and
Mhm.
these are typically grades 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe there isn't high turnover, but they're staying. And even if they're under 5 years, they have very useful skills and knowledge. So I want to take that just as a representation of the clerk's division, specifically in district court recorder and elections too.
I have kind of a different, don't throw things at me. I think we ought to pay these $500 bonuses down here when people are most likely to leave. And as far as that thank you bonus, if you will, after the end of the first year, $500. But then when you have a 10-year employee, they don't get that much because they're not likely to leave anyway. I mean, you don't go boom, boom, boom. You go boom, stay with us, stay with us, stay with us. Okay. And we'll take care of those that stay with us with our regular pay and benefits and the things that we offer through HR. That's just another idea.
We just don't want to create that compression like we have, if this is going to be a temporary thing
compression.
or temporary thing or a long-term thing. But I apologize, but I got to go to a briefing that I've been told I should be at. Is there a optional form of government meeting tonight?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Leslie, could you circulate, I guess, the 6 problem areas that you're talking about? I don't know if everybody else is aware of them, but I'm not. And
Sure.
what criteria are used to identify those?
Are you comfortable, Sylvia, with me, or are you talking about it?
Yes. So let me grab my list.
I have a list too, if you.
So our turnover rate, as I said, as a whole is about 11.19%. And so we looked at the assessor's vehicle licensing division at 23%, and we're having a hard time recruiting. And we are having a hard time recruiting everywhere. But where we have a lot of vacancies open, IT was one, juvenile detention, public defender, and of course the sheriff's jail in terms of detention deputies and control room operators. So those were some of the ones that stood out to us. And some of them don't really have that high of a turnover, but they have lots of exits and can't get those positions filled. We can look at different criteria, and that's where I think the retention task force would be helpful in identifying the criteria, but those stood out to us. And you said you had another one.
What is it, residential appraisal?
Yeah.
Appraisers.
Are you gonna say commissioner?
And do we, when I looked at this, how many of them were due to retirements? And
Right.
so, I took out the retirements, and then that lowers your turnover rate, because that's natural, the retirements, but still, are we having difficulty recruiting? And we are, everywhere we are. So there could be a case for everyone related to this. So maybe we revisit that, look at all the turnover rates, and establish the additional retention bonus for those based on what the task force comes up with.
Not to digress here, but with the fair coming up, are we going to have a booth for like a job fair booth possibly at the fair?
In our county booth, we are addressing, I think we're even gonna have a computer, so they can apply right there.
And the sheriff always has a booth. I don't
Yes.
know if they are again.
Yeah, I think they are. Search and rescue at least always does, and there's always forms to fill out and stuff. So So anything else on recruitment, retention process?
What's the timeframe, the study commission, task force?
We're
Well,
gonna have to fast track.
Is this 2 weeks? Is it 2 months? Is it?
No,
Oh,
this will
no.
Because
be-
we'll wanna do it before the end of this part of it
Okay.
then, this fiscal year, so maybe we can get a group together next week or the following week.
Well, and I think through communications via email, we can end up having a schedule to approve at the next HR meeting. So, or was
You
that?
said we have to do
next-
it by year end. Why is that, since we're going through the fund balance to fund
Right.
these?
I would think you'd wanna potentially look at giving them something now, fairly
Yeah,
soon.
I think so. I think there's
Yeah.
the salary savings and then the, what was handed out too. I mean, we can look at too, but I would recommend probably doing it before September 30th.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Then maybe we address the other half once you guys come up with a plan, but
Yeah, I guess we could do that too, and it'll be nice to hear from Grace to see how that affects everybody else. So, so sooner than later, Steve, my goal was to have the first HR meeting in September to have everybody's schedule already done. So that'll be our goal. All right, our last item, payroll process, and under Jim Brandon, Clerk's Division, and Grace has already given us some handouts.
And I thank Grace for putting this together. Just like elections, we don't sit on our hands waiting for something to happen. Payroll is busy all the time, and it's getting busier and busier. A lot of that is because some of the issues we're talking about. People leaving, people retiring, people being hired, thank goodness, 12 people are coming our way. But Grace's team has managed to get payroll out on time. And we're getting to the point where that could be in question. And I think it's important that everyone understand what we are doing and what challenges we're facing. And with that, I will hand it to Grace. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you, Jim. So the handout that I passed out, just the page 2 and 3, kind of just goes over the timeline of what payroll really does during the course of 2 weeks. And I'm going to explain the payroll process. Many departments think that once they submit their timesheets to us, payroll is over. This pay period that we're in right now, pay period 17, we processed 51 status change forms. We had 11 new hires and we had 10 exits. New hires take us approximately 20 to 30 minutes to process depending upon how complete the packet is that we receive. So if we get part of their paperwork and then it kind of trickles in over the week, we have to go back and touch that employee 2-3 times. That takes more time. Exits take a lot more time because there's a lot of things that we have to turn off. We have to credit back benefits if they paid for the next month. We have to turn off direct deposit, figure out their HRA VIBA, work with the departments to get the notice of separation complete, and oftentimes that's a back and forth with the departments to get it correct. So that takes a lot of time. So in addition to status change forms, each pay period we process changes to direct deposits, W-4s, deferred compensation, benefits, vacation donations, workers' comp adjustments, on-call standby pay, service awards, and prior pay period corrections by departments. So somebody coded sick time and it should have been FMLA sick time. So we make those adjustments, and that happens every single pay period. So we'll open our batch on a Friday, which we did last Friday, and we'll have a handful of departments that get their time in on Friday. But the bulk of it comes in on Monday. The goal is to receive all of the departments into our control or imported by noon on Monday. Doesn't always happen, but generally it does. So we spend the balance of Monday reviewing every department, their time entry. We'll communicate with the department if we have questions about what they've done. so that we can correct it before we process payroll. We never make any changes to any department's time entry without their written consent. And if we make the change, we have it in writing. Every single department has 2 sets of payroll eyes on every entry. So if we make any change, the other payroll person will review it. So on Mondays, we review the time, we validate, we run accruals, and we're ready for Tuesday. Tuesdays, we have to touch every voluntary deduction or garnishment change that happened. So we have to balance those changes to a spreadsheet in our payday register. And they have to be perfectly matched. If there's any variance, we have to go find it. We do the same thing with PERSI deductions, taxes, everything has to balance or we can't process payroll. Sometimes there is a variance and you just have to have the skill set to go find it, and not everybody does. Payroll is not over yet. So we only have until 8 p.m. on Tuesday to get the funds moving from our bank to all of the employees. So we really have a very small window of time to process payroll. So if we have status change forms that come to us that have retro pay, we have to, when we're balancing our PERSI, when we're on their site, we have to go into every single pay period back that was affected for that employee. So we don't just get to say they got paid this amount. We have to touch every prior pay period. And if we get multiple status change forms that are retro, that's how it impacts us. So Monday of a non-payroll week, well, actually Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of a payroll week, which is where we are now, we will now have to do more balancing. We will process our payroll AP, which is our taxes, our PERSI, our any deductions that we had. So that takes up the balance of the week. So then on a Monday or a non-payroll week, that's when we start the process of reviewing those 51 status change forms and all of the other changes employees make. We have 2 full-time employees, and currently they are unable to complete their work within their regularly scheduled 80 hours. I contribute at least 35 to 40% of my time to payroll. I'm supposed to be managing processes, payroll, revenue collections, and grants. Each of these areas has seen significant growth over the last few years, especially due to the pandemic. And payroll had to deal with creating new hour codes and tracking COVID. The county has received HAVA funding, CARES funding, ARPA funding is coming into play, and soon there'll be SRS funding. Revenue activity and grant activity has increased significantly because of this. In September, payroll should receive county retention bonuses to process. And last year when we processed bonuses, we gave temp employees, but none of our part-time employees received a bonus. We should begin processing COLA or step changes around the 2nd or 3rd week in September, and those will be paid out pay period 22, which is October 28th. This is the first full pay period in October, so for exempt employees, we won't have to calculate pay for 3 days of the week and a new pay for the 2nd day, so that's why we wanted a full pay period. October 1 is when open enrollment starts. Once open enrollment ends, then payroll will begin making those changes that the employees have elected. This is a manual process because PlanSource does not speak to New World. So we have to go in and change every single election that's made. The end of December, 1st of January is when our payroll tax updates come into play. Also New World updates and testing. In January, we'll generate and distribute the W-2s, and payroll tax updates have to be entered manually, every single tax table. HR currently has 4 full-time employees to process their work. Payroll has 2 full-time employees, and we really touch much of the same things, just differently. We process benefit changes, status change forms, workers' comp, vacation donations, and much more. HR basically will present benefits that are employees are eligible for, and payroll will enter the benefit the employee elects. Will make changes to those benefits if they have life changes, and we will end the benefits if the employee leaves. And I hope this demonstrates that it's not an easy button to process payroll, and it's not done when timesheets are entered.
So like,
I'd like to recognize your effort, your work effort. I learned recently that, I think it's you, every 2 weeks you put in a full-time weekend in addition to your normal workload, just to do the work and to make sure that everyone gets paid. And I just want to recognize your efforts. It's most appreciated, and I would be supportive of whatever additional funding or resources you need. So.
Thank you.
so back to these bonuses that we're contemplating and over multiple pay periods, how does that affect?
It's a little more work. If you're talking about processing pay period 19 and 20 for those bonuses, I mean, we can do it. That's also, I think that we should be receiving the COLA step changes around the second or third pay period of September. And so we'll concurrently be entering that. But because we have a broader period of time to process, we're still good. We can do it.
Okay, so that's just 2. What if we do it over 12 months?
The bonuses,
So is
so
that,
every pay period we would,
or once, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there just to trying to figure out how the task force is going to affect you. You know, if we should just do it once and then because you're short staffing, or if it doesn't cause any more pressure to do maybe once a month or something.
and that would be similar to how we process service awards right now. When somebody reaches 5 years, 10 years, 15, we receive a list from HR at the beginning of of the year, actually the fiscal year, and then we are able to go in and process those. We can get those done anytime because we build them into a schedule.
Okay.
So if we were processing
Schedule.
retention bonuses, we could get a schedule and get them entered in.
Okay. Okay, Dina, did you have anything to add?
I would just say that this is manual.
Yeah.
So every time you're doing a bonus, they have to go into an employee's information, open it up, make an entry, and touch every single person. So if you don't just push a button, you just don't upload a file, it's go in, click, 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 type in a number,
Right.
save, and come back out to the next person.
Okay.
So, I would think that if you're gonna do a bonus, you want to do it infrequently because
Sure.
of the manual nature.
So-
Would you say that that's accurate?
It is. I mean, we entered them all last year, but again, we entered them into their schedules, so.
Is there a way to program it in the system and then manage it by exception? There's no way to do that. The
Our
system.
system is very.
You know systems, I mean, come on.
We do what we can with what we have.
Right.
But
Right.
it is very manual and paychecks have to be right.
Right.
And people are human and when they're working a lot of hours, they get tired and
Sure.
they make mistakes.
Yeah.
So to avoid mistakes, I think that the fewer manual process we have to perform, the better chance we have of everybody's paychecks being right, so.
Sure.
And as a corollary to that, if you're gonna give somebody a bonus, they might like a lump sum of money. If you
Sure.
spread it out over the whole year, it's like, well, that's what I make now. So I think giving them a lump sum, to me, makes sense.
Sure, and then potentially a balance would be September and March, if we wanted to split it into 2.
Yeah.
That way it's not
You could-
too taxing.
What I was thinking was you can make the announcement, you're going to be getting this bonus if you're employed
Right.
September of next year, or whatever the date might be.
Just
So no need to do it on a monthly basis.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of thinking out loud, and I apologize for this, but if we pay $1 million of bonuses, would we have to open the budget up next year if those payments took place next year? Because the budget's being approved on the 24th. So, not that we couldn't do that. I'm just,
Right.
again, I'm thinking out loud.
We could do that, and we would.
You would have to open up the budget because that would be
Yes.
something, even though you accrued it this year, you're going to be paying it out next year.
Yeah, so we can take that into consideration as we meet.
Okay.
So, a lot of balls in the air.
I would also like to recognize Grace. I think I don't know if I've been the most active, but I've been really active this year with temporary positions converted from full-time and part-time. And I know it's been extra work, so thank you. And that goes to Dina and HR as well. I've been really active trying to, Band-Aid my situation, and I appreciate I never hear any complaints, and everything seems to be done perfectly, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this topic? Thank you, Grace. Okay. And then, if there's nothing else, I will call for public comment. Anybody online? Want to say anything? Okay. And we don't have any more public in the audience, so. All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.